Hey. I hope you guys are doing great tonight. I'm so excited that you are joining me tonight, and I'm going to need your participation because it's just not about me talking, but I want to offer you a space to where you can really understand grief, gray hairs, and growth in a way that makes even more sense. So tonight I thought I would start out with like some childhood grief foundations and family kinds of things as to how we handle grief and also how we heal. Um, Again, I am so excited that you're here tonight. Let me know who you are and where you're calling, where you're joining us from. I would love to know who's in the chat tonight. Would love that. So, give you a minute to do that. Okay, I hope you guys are doing well tonight. I've just gotten off work, so I'm gonna just be straight up real. My mind is shifting and getting ready for what we're about to talk about, but I'm so excited. So tonight's episode is about how grief shapes our identity and how we attach in our emotional growth. So one of the things that I want to start out with a little story of my childhood grief and how all of this came to be. So much of what I'm going to talk about tonight and what's in my book, it started at the tender age of 4. And oftentimes, as an educator and just kind of understanding, those are really developmental years. And when you don't get the nurturing, you don't get the support, or you really just don't get those foundational things, it can catch up with you in your later years. It plays into your adulthood. And so often I find many times clients or just people in general, they've never made sense of things that have happened to them in their youth. And what they've been taught is to just learn how to suppress it. So the first part we're going to talk about when grief first enters a child's life. And I'm Danny Ross. I'm a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, certified school counselor, and national counselor. So we are excited to share with you a little bit of that. So I want to read a little bit for you. So my father's death at age 4 taught me that loss isn't just about the absence of a person. It's about losing safety, language for pain, and the script for how to trust and attach to others. The story begins in silence, but the silence echoes for years. That's my personal story when it comes to grief, gray hairs, and loss. This story started at age 4. And I think about a lot of times as kids, we don't have the language to articulate what's going on in our head and what's going on in our world. So oftentimes we fill in the gaps with what we think people want us to be, want to share with us, and how that goes. So one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we are not just ignoring the kid and just saying, oh, they'll figure it out. They'll understand what's happening. Why would they understand when they've never experienced something at such a young age? So what we do is we share on the level as to where the child can understand. Does that mean I give them all the gory details? Does that mean I tell them every little nuance of what's happening? No. What we do is truly, we really start preparing for grief and loss early in life, like reading books on the cycle of life, talking about it earlier. So when things start happening, because eventually someone in their family is going to pass away. And we need to be in a place to where we can say, hey, do you remember we talk about the different seasons in life, like the 4 seasons where we have the leaves falling? Everything has a season, and at some point, everything will die, and then things start over again. And so explaining it on the level that they can get it. So what I want to do is ask you, let's talk about your first grief experience, not just, when someone left, but that first moment the world felt kind of unsafe and really you couldn't make sense of it. So I want you to drop a heart in the chat excuse me. I want you to drop a heart in the chat if grief entered your world early. Somebody out there, grief entered into your world early. So there's a lot connected to the grief that we share when it starts early. There's so much connected to that. So I want you to type the age that you were when the loss happened. Okay. All right. I see my sister on here. Hey, Ray, what's up? That's my sister, y'all. And Ray, she gave some really good information. She talked about how she's processing her grief too. We've gone through a lot of loss in the past couple of years. I got Caleb on here. What's up, Caleb Mitchell? What's up? So I want you guys to participate with me in this. If this is you, I want you to go ahead and put those hearts in there. Okay. If grief entered your world early in life, comment with a heart in the chat. Okay. So I want you to think about it. When did grief first introduce itself? Was it as a child? Was it as a teen or an adult? Thank you so much. Thank you, Caleb. 7. I think I saw Pam on here, and she mentioned she was an adult before she had a close death. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful that you're answering and connecting. So if your childhood self could speak, what would they say about that loss? What would they say from a place of that 4-year-old, that 5-year-old, that adult? Because oftentimes we handle things in the space at when certain things stopped or never started. So let's just say you were muted in a sense from dealing with grief and loss because, parents say, well, we're not going to talk about that. We just not going to talk about grandma's in a better place. She happy. She all of this and that. But still, at the end of the day, we are not dealing with the pain of it all. So I would love to hear from you. My sister says she was 14 when she recognized the true feeling of loss. And I also say, too, sometimes we use these adult terms or this adult language, or we'll say, just take it to God in prayer. For a 4-year-old, for a 10-year-old, even a 14-year-old, that really doesn't help when the physical pain is there and they are not really understanding. We're going to combine our faith, but we're also going to be realistic and not make kids feel badly because they feel pain and they feel the absence of someone that they love. So I want you to get you some paper tonight. I'm not going to just be talking tonight. You're going to participate. I want you to get you some paper. So let's look at that grief. I remember the story here's the story of my dad when he passed away. I remember I was about 4 years old, and I remember there was a lot of crying around me. And I remember people were, just a lot of people coming over to the house. And I was kind of putting 2 and 2 together, but not quite making the connection. But I knew that my dad had been ill for quite some time. And all I could remember, there was this gash in his neck. And I often used to think of it. I was like, gosh, that looks like a Frankenstein scar. And I knew he used to spit a lot. I can recall that. Larry, I think you probably even remember all of that. And I just remember one day he went to the hospital because I knew he was going to the hospital, but he was going in and out. And what typically happens is, I don't know if we always share what's actually going on with the loved one who is ill. Sometimes we don't have the conversation with the child who needs to be spoken to about what's happening because oftentimes they're going to make it up. I think a lot in my life I suffered with because no one explained grief or death in a way that a little boy could make sense of. So in my first chapter, here's an excerpt. No one explained grief or death in a way a little boy could make sense of. What I saw were adults keeping it moving, brushing tears aside, and putting strength on display. Now, many of us, we know what that feels like, and we know how that, yeah, we know how to do that. But did it ease our pain, or did we just suppress our pain to just make us look a certain way? And think about it. We start learning how to put on a mask early in our life. I want you to raise your hand in the chat if you know what it means to put on that mask and to try to fake the front to make other people feel happy. You know, and okay. Pam says, coming from Alabama, I don't think traditionally kids were allowed to attend funerals, which may be why I wasn't introduced to death as a child. I can recall that too, Pam. I was sitting there thinking as you just wrote that. One of the things I always wanted to do was go see the people in the hospital. But back in the day, I remember that we could not go up the elevator to see the person who was ill. I think it was an age limit of 12. And for me, that just gave me mystery. I didn't know what was happening. So I put the worst case scenario in place. So one of the things I also think about is I've watched a lot of grown people act brave, and they learn how to quickly remove those tears or to have those tears in private. And in my mind as a kid, strong meant that we were supposed to be, you know, silent, stoic, ain't nothing bothering me. This is just how it is. So if this sounds familiar to you, I want you to put some little googly eyes chat box. If this sounds familiar to you, if you were taught to be strong, I know sometimes we don't even, we're not told to be strong, but we are, we're made to feel as though we need to be strong. We're made to feel as though we need to be strong. And oftentimes when we have that feeling like we need to be strong, it really kind of dictates a lot of what will happen possibly later in life, because we learn how to pretend in relationships. We learn how to pretend on the job. We learn how to pretend when we're with our partner. We learn how to pretend and make things appear a certain way. I was at a meeting last week, and one of the things that came out of that meeting is I have learned how to make people feel okay about, you know, it could be something blatantly wrong. Like we had coffee, and the coffee was the first cup of coffee was cold, or it tasted a little bitter. But the way I was taught, you don't say things about what people are giving you. You just take it, you be okay with it, and that should just do, right? And so one of the guys he mentioned, he said, you can be honest. You don't have to explain or anything, but he said, you can be honest. And for me, that was like the first time that I really heard how I handled maybe difficult moments or something like that, is to kind of just wrap up and not make everybody feel. I used to try to make everybody feel comfortable. And so for me, I've had to work at really being authentic, really sharing how I feel, really just being okay and sharing the truth, because sometimes we don't have a voice. So I want you to feel this out for me. As a child, I believe strength meant what? As a child, I believe strength meant what? So tell me, what was your idea? Put it in the chat as to what strength meant for you. Okay. What strength meant for you. I'd love to hear from some of y'all out here who know about faking the front, showing a falsehood of strength, and you know you feel some kind of way. Okay. So I think also silence, Whitney says silence. Thank you, Whitney, for sharing that. Taking care of everybody else, silence, taking care of everyone else, not showing emotion. So we learn how to be stoic. We learn how to put that face on, but there is a hefty price to pay at the end of the day when you become this adult. And oftentimes I'm in session and I hear couples or even individuals. I work with a lot of guys and they're just like, well, Jasmine says be perfect. I work with a lot of guys and they're just like, they just don't know how to show emotions because they've been taught to suppress. And some of the females out here, you're dealing with that same thing. You learn suppression. But I always say, oftentimes females get to have that girlfriend who they get to have this banter with, and they get to talk about problems and issues and things that come up for them. However, guys don't develop that as often. So you ask us to tell us how we feel. The day was good. We got food to eat. The house is clean. My car working. Those are the things that we feel and sometimes we express. But to go deeper in that, it really, really takes a lot of understanding, conversation and processing and exploring and tearing things apart when it comes to language. I know one of the things that I learned how to do, like, you sometimes kind of scan the room and you size people up for safety. Who can I sit by? Who can I talk to? Who's going to tell my business? All of us know that idea of, what stays in this house, what we talk about in this house, it stays in this house. And then I also say until it becomes really, really difficult and we're sitting here trying to handle things on our own. I've seen that happen oftentimes in schools where our kids are told to, don't tell your business to those teachers out there. And so we build them up to get into this place to where you're basically telling the kids to do more of that suppression. And what do you think happens to those little bitty kids? They turn into adults who have learned how to suppress as well. If that's you, I want you to just raise a finger. If that's you, I want you to raise a finger. So grief became my teacher long before I graduated from silence. Listen to that again. Grief became my teacher long before I graduated from silence. It taught me that we don't talk about it. It taught me that we're not comfortable with it. It taught me that we don't bring it up until someone passes away. It taught me to, we talk about that silence. Going to that next level is the silence. So, did the adults in your life model grief or did they hide it? Did the adults in your life model grief or did they hide it? I oftentimes tell parents always think that their kids, some kind of way, that they don't see what's happening, nor do they understand what's going on. Let me tell you, I taught third grade. I taught early childhood through 12th grade. Those kids will come in and tell your business. You hear me? They will come in and tell your business. And we're talking about little ones who know exactly what mom and dad are doing. So if they can do that, imagine what they're doing when they see you being stoic about someone you really say that you love and you're not expressing the grief. We just got to really be mindful that we think they're not watching it, but they really are. Hid it. Miss Pam, she said, we hid it. How did their reactions teach you about love and strength? I think I knew that we loved each other, but we were kind of taught to, well, you know that. I ain't got to tell you that. So you move that same kind of ideology or that same kind of way of dealing with emotions, expressing yourself into relationships and into jobs, and you wonder why you come across a certain way. You have that stoic look. You have that, what we call in counseling, like that flat affect. You have no distinguishing facial expressions. I can't read you. I don't know what's going on. So kids learn to do that. Survival scripts. I want to talk about those survival scripts that we come up with. Here's one. Here's one of the quotes from my chapter. It says, "We leaned on gospel songs in the first chapter." If you have your books, take out your book. In the first chapter, it says, "We leaned on gospel songs, cooked food for half the neighborhood, and we kept moving." Those were the ways grieving were rooted in survival. They were rooted in survival, but left little room for vulnerability. I really think these are the opportunities to teach and set a foundation for vulnerability, for those things that we really need to be discussing earlier, because the kids are modeling what they do and say from you. If you don't show emotions, if all you do is scream and yell, and they're either going to do two things. They're going to go inward or they're going to go outward. And when I say outward, outward means we turn angry. Inward means it possibly turns into depression. And instead of dealing with it, we learn how to minimize the pain, and we learn how to act like mom and daddy. Ain't nothing bothering us. Everything is okay. And that's not necessarily how we want to show love. In our culture, food and music cover pain like a quilt. I think about, I remember in my first book, I was talking about how I remember seeing all the foods and the different things coming over, the chocolate cake, the fried chicken, all of that stuff. And I let out a laugh, and I say, that's where I got I started with my difficulty with food. I was noticing food back in the day at the repast. A lot of wonderful things. And then you also notice, if this is for you as well, oftentimes when we go to the repast, it's almost like funeral happens or celebration service, however you want to call it. And then we come to the repast and we try to laugh through it and try to make jokes. And not that we want this to be a sad occasion, but we're so eager to get over it. We're so eager to get over it. Raise your hand if you've experienced something like that, or if you noticed that with someone else. Yes, we love our music. We love our culture. And, a lot of times the comfort came in the casserole dish, but rarely did we have conversations about grief. Rarely did we have conversations about grief. One of the things I think about too is music. Music is so symbolic to me. I think about one of the songs that my sister used to sing is "I Pray That We're All Ready." And to this day, I refuse to kind of listen to that song because my sister had an amazing voice. I mean, like, she really could have done something with that. And that's Barbara Ann, who passed away. And when I hear that song, even in my adult self, knowing better, I still try to avoid it. I still try to be strong. I still try to be mindful of my feelings. But I also, here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with that, because not every time that you turn around do you have the opportunity to just bust out and cry, or you're in a space to where you can take 15 minutes away from your job and just, zone out. No, sometimes you just can't do that. But one of the things you must do is deal with the grief appropriately when you get the opportunity. One of the things that I used to do, and I share with clients, is that sometimes we need to set a timer daily. I don't care if you don't do anything, but sit there for 15, 20 minutes and just sit with the grief. You may not even cry, but sometimes you really do have to focus on those memories. But we're so taught in our westernized culture that we need to get over this soon. There's so much that needs to be happening. So I often think about that strength, and I call it pseudo strength because it's not real. We just learn how to put it put it out there for others. Okay. So another question I have for you guys out there, how did your family teach you to keep going after loss? How did your family teach you to keep going after loss? Sometimes they told us to stay busy, putting us in all types of sports, putting us in the Sunbeam Choir, all of these different things. How did your family teach you to keep going after loss? So we have all of these different things that's supposed to make us not feel or think about it. And so I think about working with clients who have suppressed for years and years, and they wonder why they're angry. They wonder why they come across a certain way, because all of that pain is buried on the inside. I want you to think about an iceberg. Oftentimes in the iceberg, there's ice underneath the water, but we don't always see that. But I want you to think about grief that same way. We have the iceberg up top, and grief is on the top, but underneath that grief is a couple of understandings of what the grief means for you. Sometimes I wish I had done more. Sometimes underneath the iceberg is, I don't know what I'm going to do without them. I should have listened. I was a bad kid. I was not a good person or a good spouse. Or it's just a lot of the negative. Sometimes you feel shame from the loss. There are certain losses, let's just be honest, that we don't go around announcing that, Shoo got into it and somebody got shot and killed. You think we're going to talk about that as a group of people? Probably not. But also think about this. If you don't ever talk about it, you possibly can be prolonging the healing process. So this is what I say. If you can't talk to the immediate people around you, find some people who get it. Find some people who understand you. Find some people who want to hear your story. Part of the healing is through words. Most times we're not healing because we don't allow ourselves to feel, and we don't talk about the pain. The pain is there. The pain is real. The pain is purposeful. A lot of times we don't recognize that grief oftentimes wakes the rest of our lives up, because sometimes we haven't been living, and we really need to figure out, what is grief trying to teach me? What is grief trying to teach me? Is it teaching me to slow down? Is it teaching me to be kinder? Is it teaching me to slow down and notice, like, when you have made a milestone? I used to use this little phrase to where I used to say, how will you know that you are there? Because we always say, when I get there, this is what I'm going to do. And then what tends to happen, we keep moving the goalposts over and over and over again, and it gets further and further away. And what we find ourselves doing is not enjoying life, because we're so serious about making those goals. I think one of the things that the deaths of my siblings and my mom have taught me, and my aunts, I've lost so many, and uncles, is to just slow down and really enjoy life. One of the things I really enjoy doing now, I feel like I used to be in the streets. I don't mean like doing bad stuff, but I used to be out there in them streets enjoying come on. I've enjoyed life. I'm still enjoying life. However, I'm in a space now to where I want to enjoy where I live. Anybody out there just want to enjoy where you live and not be doing, as Mama used to, all that ripping and running? We don't always need to be doing something. Sometimes we need to sit down somewhere and figure out, what is the grief trying to share with me? What is the grief trying to do with me? What is my purpose? As much as I've been fighting and trying to get away from doing this grief work, it's been calling me. It's been calling me. It's been calling me. And I say the first, when my sister passed away, and that was in 2021, I kind of felt like I wanted to start working in that because it brought up my pain from my dad's death. And I realized that I didn't quite deal with all of that related to his death. So when she died, it was like all of that came back together. And it took me a while. I went to therapy. I've done the work. Mr. Therapist here, he has had to do his own work. He has knotted up in sessions and not want to see people see his ugly cry. But I have to really be about what I ask other people to do. So if you're a parent and you really want to help your child get through things, they need to see you cry. They need to see you having moments and little memorials and different little honors to where you can bring that person up. So I want to ask a question today. Were there things you weren't allowed to feel and say? Were there certain things that you weren't allowed to feel and say? Again, I think about some of those people, and everybody in the town knew how they died, but we're sitting up here acting like we don't know. And I'm not saying that we just go out there and we just, chitter chatter about that. But what we do have to do is give people space to grieve and not make them feel like they have to hide their pain. I see that so often. We will not give people the space to feel their pain and deal with their grief. I'm sitting here wondering if they're going to bring up such and such and how they got shot. No, we got it. But if they need to talk about it, but we don't want to put them in a position to where they're made to feel bad about how someone died. I always say there are certain deaths that we can talk about, and there's others that we live in shame with. And it's up for us to change some of those things that are bothering, just changing some of those things that we don't talk about. There's this thing, I want to get into this, the cultural comfort. The cultural comfort, cultural comfort reflection. What are some ways in our culture that we are comforted? I want you to put a candle, if you can find where the candle is, or whatever you want to put. If you want to put a heart there. Name one ritual that comforted you. And for me, I think one of the things that comforted me is music. I love music. Music is self-soothing. Music makes me think. Music makes me feel. And sometimes I will sit in the office after a session is done, and I will sit there and I will cry and I will be a student of the grief. Ooh, that's good. That's good, Caleb. The end result of grief is often the ability to remember the loss with less pain, recognizing that while grief may never fully disappear, one can live with its damage. Come on, Twani. That's what I'm talking about. Music. Come on, Misha. I love that. So for me, it's really trying to find that thing. I like to cook, and more recently now that mom has passed, and that's one of the ways that makes me feel closer to her. That's one of the ways that makes me feel like she's still in me, because I've been tearing some food up lately. Like, you talking about seasoning, I feel like she be up in there shaking the bottles for me. And helping me like, Daddy, you need a little bit more of that. That's when you get to a place to where you find the meaning. Quit trying to get rid of them and see how can you incorporate the loss of that person back into your life in a way that's healthy for you. We're so quick to try to forget them. How can you incorporate them back into your life? Because that's so, so, so important. The more that you try to pull them away, the worse it can feel for you. Okay. Name one that kept you quiet. Name Name one ritual that kept you quiet. Name one ritual that kept you quiet. What ritual could keep you quiet as to how we deal with death? You're gonna get a spanking if you keep talking about that. So many different things. So I want to kind of move into how this kind of shows up into our adulthood, healing and reframing in adulthood. I love reframing because reframing tells us that we can say how we feel, but we have to articulate it with the right words, the right emotions, and the right facial expressions that go with that. And I tell people sometimes people love to say, well, that's just the way I am. Okay, that's good, but nobody likes you. Nobody likes being around you. You're nasty, you come across wrong because you will not learn the skills as to how to communicate. I've had to learn how to be a better communicator because every day I can have 6 to 8 people who have all of these different nuances in communication, but I can't go up, I can't be Freud with a patient who is just needs some down home conversation. You have to bring yourself into the space that you're in. So let's work on that a little bit more. No one teaches you how to grieve when you're little, and even when you're grown, it's not like it comes with a manual. Wow, that's good, Danny. And even when you're grown, it doesn't come with a manual. And it wasn't until adulthood and several years of therapy later that I finally began to understand what grief actually was. And realistically, grief is nothing more than that heartache, that pain, that desire, that want to be with someone so badly, and you know that you don't have that anymore. Grief is heartbreak. Grief is pain. Grief is desire. Grief is sorrow. I would love to know in one word from you, what is grief to you? What is grief to you? What is grief to you? Just one word. Tawane said, so she said storytelling and laughter. Okay. The end result of grief. Oh, that's good. That's really good. Okay. Look, at my journey has increased my emotion, the heaviness, emotion of them all. Okay. That's good. That's good. Okay, drop some prayer hands if therapy, prayer, or journaling help you find your peace. Thank you, Ms. Pam, for that. Painful. That's one of the words that describe the grief. Painful, heavy. Tawane says heavy. The heaviness of the emotion, all of Lyra. Okay, one of the ways, let's go back to Lyra. She said one of the ways that she deals with her grief is through shopping. That's good. That's good. I know we got some shoppers in our family. We got some shoppers. People love that store a little bit too much. Nothing wrong with that if we do everything in moderation. So I want you to put your prayer hands if you use therapy, prayer, or journaling to help you with your peace. Put those hands up. Put those hands up. And if you're still learning, I want you to type that. I'm still learning some of those things like journaling, trying to get into your prayer time, trying to finally get into therapy. And then you may be even just still trying to figure out how to grieve because you really haven't had a good model. Come on, let's just be honest. Some of us have never had a good model that was okay, sometimes with their emotions and sometimes with their sometimes with what they truly need to get out. I think in working with a lot of men, when it comes to grief and loss, prayer, thank you, Lyra. When it comes to grief and loss, I think with men, we have learned how to just be doers. We out here making things happen. We're out here like what needs to be done. So when we say somebody is not grieving properly, we can't really just say that. We all grieve differently, but I know specifically with men, oftentimes we like to be doers. And there are women who like to be doers. But I think one of the things that I remember Mama talking about when my dad died, she had so much going on, and she had these 8 kids that she was responsible for. And Dad died when she was, in her, I think, mid-30s. Tell me if I'm wrong, Larry, somebody out there who knows. But I know she was around her mid-30s when my dad died, and Mom was a stay-at-home mom. And being that she was a stay-at-home mom, she had never really worked outside of the home. She was busy there taking care of us. And so she had to augment her life totally. She had to step into that caregiver place. And one of the things she said is she just didn't have time to grieve because she knew these little people were depending on her. And I was watching another show where they were talking about that same thing. And the lady said similar thing. The lady said that she didn't have time to grieve. And because she didn't have time to grieve is 7 years later. She's just now getting to a place that she could grieve. And I think the therapist who was on there was so excellent in saying to her, sometimes we're not in a place to where the world will allow us to grieve because we have people and responsibilities that depend on us. But there's nothing wrong with grieving later. If that's what you have to do, don't beat yourself up because you didn't grieve when everybody else grieved. Sometimes life puts us in that place, but if you can grieve when it's happening, it really can be that much more helpful in the processing of the grief, and you're not finding yourself just kind of suppressed. Okay, still learning how to grieve because I so much has hit me in the past 4 years without having time to grieve from the first unexpected death. That's something I talk about in my book. Grief changes you. So, say for instance, this one grief experience changed me. So add 3 or 4 that's just happened to me in the last 5 years. Sometimes I don't know if I'm coming or going. I try to be honest in my grief and sharing where I am and what I'm feeling and what's going on with me. But sometimes I don't have the words. But sometimes the tears are my words. Sometimes the music is my words. Figure out when you don't know what to do, what you can do to have your moment with grief. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's reading a support kind of book that helps you get through it. Whatever you need to do to sit with that grief is going to be monumental. Tawani says, I typically tell folks to go to the water, sit by the ocean, and listen. It's spiritual. I like that. I love the water too. I just can't swim, so I ain't trying to get out there. But I do hear you. Mama was 30 when Dad passed, so she was younger. See? Can you imagine? And Mom and Dad, they were married from the first child. They were married before the first child came. So she had been a homemaker for years, and to have 8 kids who needed her, she had to show up. She had to kind of put herself to the side. I can't even imagine that. I used to always joke with her. I say, whew, I'm so glad you stayed because I probably would have run off. I'm just kidding, but I'm really, really thankful that she stayed and she did what was necessary to put us in a better place, because not everyone can do that. What did adulthood teach you about your childhood grief? What did adulthood teach you about your childhood grief? I think adulthood taught me that it's okay, first of all, to have feelings. Adulthood also taught me that it's okay to make something out of the pain. Adulthood taught me that it's okay to talk about it, to talk to others about it. And one of my favorite things that I talk to clients about, they love to say, I don't want people to know my business. What you really hiding? When you really think about it, do you think some of the stuff that we're holding on to and people not knowing is really going to break your life or tear your life up? No. So what I'm asking you is, we're in this space to where vulnerability is so important and it's a must. If I can't be vulnerable to myself, I can't be vulnerable to my partner. If I can't be vulnerable to myself, I can come in with a pseudo version of myself in church, but go out here and treat people terribly and poorly because I am not dealing what's really on the inside. And I have to reveal myself so that I can be seen and really talk to someone about what's on the inside. But that requires vulnerability. That requires vulnerability. When did you finally give yourself permission to feel? I would love to hear that from you. When did you give yourself time and permission to heal? Larry said, it taught me to talk about it. I love that. It taught me to talk about it. I love that. What did grief tell you in your adulthood? Okay. When did you finally give yourself permission to feel? I think I started giving myself permission to feel probably when I was getting my my master's in counseling. I think I started realizing, like, I'm not just crazy, or this thing has a name. Understanding that, oh, it can get better. But what I was taught is to just keep it to yourself, and God's going to handle it, and it's going to get better. And let's just be honest, as a kid, when somebody was saying, just pray about it, that means just be quiet. That means just keep it to yourself because you're making me feel uncomfortable. Sometimes kids learn how to accommodate, and then that same kid who grows up into the adult, that adult learns how to, you've learned how to accommodate as a kid. So now you're an adult doing the same thing to your own children. We have to be mindful that let's just say people do see us, but kids are forever watching us. One of the things I put in my journal is that grief didn't just heal me, it made me human again. And there's a quote that I put on Facebook, and I talk about how there are things that I lost through the grief specifically when my mom died. But now I'm rediscovering this whole new person that I didn't know existed. I don't know if any of you have experienced that realizing, like, there's a whole person that you have to rediscover. And I was talking to someone today about sometimes when we're grieving or sometimes when we're going through anything and life has changed, we're trying to hold on to what we know versus where we are now. I remember when I lost weight the first time, second time, third, sometimes I was trying to go back to that same young 20-something-year-old with the vigor and the vitality that I had as that youngster. I'm not in the same place. Your grief puts you out of the same. You're not that same person after the grief happens. So you really have to sit with yourself and take some time to really figure out, who are you now? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? I stopped studying how to survive and started practicing how to breathe. I got from that place of just trying to get through it. And I learned to realize that I just need to take it day by day. I just need to take it breath by breath. My sister said something that was so good, and she didn't, Larry, I'm giving you props, Larry, because that was so good. She was talking about sometimes when she's at home, she can be by herself and she can just grieve in private, do a little work, grieve some more. And then after that, she feels better. I love that she shared that with me, because for me, that's a piece that I'm going to incorporate even more in my daily life. Continue to do what I need to grieve, but also continue to do the work that I need to get done. But it's okay to cry. It's okay to do whatever's necessary to help you through that grief process. Ooh. I want you to grab a pen, a notebook. My mom passed in 1992, and I felt freely in 2008. Ooh, wow. There's like you're right. There's such a new type of freedom that happens, but you have to go through the process. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. So I want you to grab a pen, a notebook, get on your phone notes, do whatever you got to do. And we're about to have a quick conversation about grief. I want you to write to grief, and I want you to say, this is what you're saying. Dear grief, I don't understand you. And so write back as grief. So what would grief be saying? Dear such and such, here's why I came. Dear Lyrae, this is why I came. Grief is here to help us understand even more about ourselves. Think about if loss never happens. We would never really truly appreciate good times. There used to be a song, if it hadn't been no rain in your life, wait a while. So I remember that song as a kid. I didn't know what that meant. But if there's not been any rain in your life, wait a while, because in the waiting, you recognize there's going to be a time to where you're going to be appreciative where something is not happening. Like right now, I don't care if it's just a month or two out. It's almost kind of sometimes fearful to breathe, because sometimes you wonder when the bottom is going to drop out. But I have to get out of those distorted thoughts, and I really have to get into a frame of mindset that's more positive. And I have to challenge some of the things that I say to myself. Sometimes we let things ride. Sometimes we just let things be instead of challenging what we should be challenging. Everything we think is not the truth. Everything we Miss Pam, you're so funny. Everything that we say, just because I said it or feel it doesn't make it the truth. It is what it is. Instead of just allowing things to be what we think we want it to be, come up with some deviations to that. Come up with some alternative thoughts. Come up with some things that are healthier for you. So I want you to do that exercise when you have some time, even more. What wisdom are you holding from me? So that's another question to ask grief. You're in this process of finding out. I wrote, grief, you've stolen too much from me. And the reply said, I didn't steal. I reveal what mattered most. Come on now. Listen to what I wrote to grief. Grief, you've stolen too much from me. And grief replies, I didn't steal. I just revealed what mattered most. Now you're in a place to where it's so important to recognize what truly matters in your life. I remember when Mom first got her Alzheimer's, I was ripping and running and going, and it really made me slow down. It really made me enjoy the beauty of life with her and really sitting in that space, getting to know her as an adult who's, in the decline of her life. But I wanted to gather those stories. I wanted to gather that's just the feeling of being in her presence again. That's one of the things I miss most. My mama and I would get on the couch in that hot house. Larry, y'all know what I'm talking about. In that hot house, and we would talk about God and her blessings. And I don't think that ever left her. Mama could strike up a conversation about God in a minute. So when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling pressure, when I'm feeling whatever it is I'm feeling, I choose to think about those moments that I had with her, sitting on the couch, her pouring wisdom into me, her speaking into my life and not even recognizing that's what she's doing. So if you're planning on doing this, I really want you to, put something in the box that says, I'm doing this tonight. I really want you to speak to grief, and I want you to listen to the reply that grief is trying to give you. Larry say, grief taught her to talk about it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And maybe you want to just share one word that grief might say to you, just that one word. So the family ritual and reflection, we're getting to the end. In our house, the pot stayed on, the hymns stayed on. The hymns never stopped, and we kept moving, but no one said it's okay to cry. I want you to recognize that you have an opportunity to do something different. You have an opportunity to be your own person. You have an opportunity to say, you know what? I'm scared. I don't know if I'm going to be okay with this pain. One of the things I like to do is when I'm in my group, I like to say, where are you weather-wise? Some of you might be sunny. Some of you might be cloudy. Some of you might be sunny with a little rain in the forecast. Some of you might have some fog. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you in your journey? If you were using weather, where are you in your journey? Are you a little stormy? Is it thunderstorms happening? So I want to start ending tonight, and I want to end with us just really understanding that grief is here to stay, but it's also here to teach us a lesson. It takes, but it also gives. I don't think I would have the passion I have for helping others had I not experienced what I'm experiencing through these last losses. Do I want them here with me today? Yes, I want them here with me today. But I also feel like that God gives us purpose, and he gives us a mindset that says, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to do with this space that I've given you to see something differently? I so thank you for your time. If tonight's message moved you, I want you to come back tomorrow for day 2 for growing up grieving. We'll go deeper into the adult lessons, like some trauma type things, the unfolding, the unlearning, how we are as men, and talking about those particular things. And I don't want you to forget our workshop, Grief, Gray Hairs, and Growth on Saturday. Many of the little exercises that we're doing today, they're going to be, we have other exercises. There's a whole new presentation or workshop that I created. If you hadn't bought my book, you need to. I don't give myself credit enough, but this book, I put everything into it. And if you really want to hear a little bit of my heart and who I am and what I've learned and what I've gained from being, from going through this process, you really should take a look at this book and get some of the supports that I offer in here. There's some neat little strategies that you can use to get through your grief. And I think it's some funny stories and some really good things you can learn. Tomorrow, I want you to bring your book. I want you to bring a journal, and I want you to bring your whole self. I want you to realize that healing is waiting for you, but you have to make the first step, and you have to be okay in being vulnerable. Family, I want you to remember, healing grows where truth is told. This is grief growth, excuse me. Wow, I can't say it. Grief, gray hairs, and growth. And I want you to know that I'm so happy that you came tonight, and we're going to continue to keep uncovering one story at a time. I'm so happy you came tonight. Take care. Have a blessed night. Take some time to spend that time with the grief, and also spend some time recognizing there was a lot of great things that happened prior to the grief. And I want you to think about those things, but sometimes we're in that last chapter. Let's go beyond the last chapter and let's go back to some of those previous memories that really gave us joy. Have a great night. You guys have been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being with me. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye now.